we also wanted to start off the show by talking a little bit about our, thoughts, some reflections on the Democratic National Convention, which took place over the last week. And Nando, I'm going to go ahead and just toss it to you first. What were your thoughts?
Well, I did the Matt Taibbi, Joe Biden drinking game during his speech. I was actually on Zoom with a couple friends. As buds do, you watch the DNC and you get drunk. And I mean, I got to say the whole DNC has just been this unbelievably soul-sucking experience where you're seeing one of the deepest and broadest crises we've ever faced. Certainly the biggest economic crisis, at least in 100 years. An absolute, crippling health crisis that has had us in our homes for 6 months, and the DNC offers you nothing for any of those things. Literally nothing. Just a parade of speakers, all often Republicans. Colin Powell spoke. I mean, one of the people that is single-handedly most responsible for the Iraq War, one of the greatest crimes in the last 200 years. And John Kasich. I mean, it's all just so bleak in terms of the near term in the political outlook, and the DNC just confirmed all of it. I mean, just gives you nothing. Like, we don't know anything what these people plan on doing if they do take power. Like, literally nothing. We just know that they're going to be like fundamentally decent human beings, and they're not Trump, and that's all we got.
I can't help but think back at the 2016 election and how there was this just ridiculous theory among some people who identify as Democrats, some of whom might even identify as leftists, who made this argument that if you elect someone as awful as Donald Trump, the whole country will suffer so much that it'll spark a revolution, that we'll finally get a Bernie-like candidate who's considered viable by the majority of the electorate. And the exact opposite happened.
Yeah.
Exact opposite. I mean, Biden's whole campaign strategy is, hey, look at me. I'm not psycho. Like, I'm not going to use federal agents against you if you protest. Great. That's awesome. But, it's amazing to me how, on one hand, we're confronted by the massive flaws in our system during this pandemic. And then on the other hand, you have politicians. They remind me of that meme of the dog that's like sitting at a table, like reading a newspaper while everything's burning around it. and everything's fine,
it's
nothing to
the
see
violinists
here.
on the Titanic, sinking as the Titanic's sinking, they're playing the violin. I mean, it's just, I think you're right that, there was this idea that possibly like things would get so bad against Trump that we would like hit rock bottom and find some sort of like new type of politics on the back end. I mean, I think what ended up happening is that the vast majority of people just crave a sense of normalcy. Like, I mean, the extreme daily chaos is exhausting to most people, and they just crave a sense of normalcy, and the DNC is giving it to them in spades. Like, I mean, it's relatively well produced. It looks pretty competent. Everyone kind of says the right words.
Are you sure you were watching it? You thought it was relatively well produced?
I mean,
it was like in the sense disaster.
That, well, no, in the sense that like, there wasn't like any major, like collapses. Like, there wasn't like, it was fine is what I'm saying in that sense from like a, I guess from a production, like technological standpoint, it just kind of went off and, I mean, yeah, it was corny and cheesy and terrible in that sense, but it was like competently put together, if that makes sense. And I think that's literally what they're giving people and nothing else. Like, I mean, we don't know if they support any sort of meaningful reform to the system to deal with the coronavirus pandemic. Nothing, just literally
mask
nothing.
Mandate.
There
will be a mask mandate.
There will be a mask mandate, yeah.
Which was, something that Biden said on the last night of the DNC when he gave his speech. So that was like the most concrete, I guess, policy that he mentioned during his speech. But, the thing is, we've been trained to have such low expectations. And I was actually terrified that Biden's speech was going to be a complete and utter disaster because of obvious reasons, right? And so when it was over, I was a little relieved. But it was amazing to like hear both Democrats and Republicans. Like I'm talking about hardcore conservatives on Fox News, basically compliment Biden's speech as if it was like the best speech ever given.
Yeah.
Chris Wallace was complimenting him. I mean, it was a star-studded Republican event in a lot of ways. You mentioned Colin Powell. And so, okay, I get it. Maybe they see the Democratic Party as the new Republican Party. And, based on how Biden legislated, it's not that far-fetched. Yeah. It's all very depressing.
It's very depressing.
It's hard to talk about it because, you know me, like I have a hard time holding back. But at the same time, I understand, the threat of Trump's second term, right? So I don't want to discourage people from voting for Biden, but at the same time, I also got to call a spade. And this administration isn't going to be great. We all know that. And normalcy is pretty awful when you consider policy-wise what was happening during our various phases of normalcy, right? I mean, Donald Trump is just this ugly, vulgar, transparent version of the normalcy. And I think people forget about that, with the exception of what he did at the border and what he did with federal agents. I mean, that's a little unprecedented.
In the latest issue of Jacobin, Matt Karp has a very long piece that kind of analyzes the political landscape. I highly recommend it to anyone, but he talks about how one of the defining trends of the Democratic Party in the last couple of years is the entrant of this new type of Democratic primary voter that he calls the Halliburton voter, right? Like, there was the Halliburton Democrat, just really beyond like what we had originally thought of like good liberals in the suburbs. Now we're getting kind of like these ruling class conservatives that would always vote Republican entering the Democratic Party, and those are the people that the Democratic Party is serving with their DNC. Like it fits perfectly thematically. So I highly recommend everyone to go read that piece. It's very long, very good. He does a lot of analysis and data, and it's great.